Five Nights in Anime. When I say that name, I've either left you in confusion, or you're in anaphylactic shock with your face down on your keyboard. Five Nights in Anime, or FNAF, is a Five Nights at Freddy's quote-unquote parody game.
Are you sure about that?
And while the game and its creator have eluded any form of controversy for the time being, the game seems to have quite the reputation, sort of being one of the first, albeit unintentional, FNAF Rule 34 and Rule 63 pieces of content. You probably know of Rule 34, the rule of the internet stating that if it exists, there is porn of it. No exceptions. But there is also Rule 63, another internet rule stating that for every given male character, there is a female version of that character, and vice versa. I feel these rules describe this series pretty well, regardless of what the warning provided at the beginning of the first game says. Now, like I said, the game and its creator, Marisu, who we will be talking on later, have evaded controversy, which makes sense. When a franchise or IP becomes popular, it's typical that some terminally online people slap some boobies on it at some point. I'm personally not a fan, but sadly it's bound to happen. FNAF is a strange footnote left in the wake of the massive franchise that is Five Nights at Freddy's, and I want to recall that with you today. Quick warning, moving forward I will be doing my best to censor all unsavory content relating to the games and stuff, but still, if you're on the younger side or are just generally made uncomfortable by more adult content, you're probably going to want to skip this one. With that being said, let's start with Five Nights in Anime 1. Five Nights in Anime 1 is the one that started it all. It's honestly a bit hard to find information on this game as it stands right now, or even the game itself, but we'll get to that later. FNAF starts us off on a very interesting menu screen. And as I sat here at 9 AM on a Friday morning, realizing I'm going to have to spend hours censoring all this, I got a little bit sadder.
Are you winning, son?
I want to clarify I'm censoring all of this to be extra safe for my audience and for YouTube, but these animatronics are, built like Barbie, if that makes sense. This also applies to Five Nights in Anime 2. Now, before I go into the nights and the mechanics within them, I need to talk about one issue with this main menu. I can start Night 5 right now. That's right, anyone who downloads this game can just go right into Night 5, no context, without playing any of the previous nights, which is honestly just kind of funny. Regardless, I didn't end up doing this, and I ended up playing the game as intended by Marisu himself. Now, the first thing you may notice is this is the FNAF 1 office, but with less fan on the desk and more of this. Now, even though this game's main mechanics and map are a direct rip of FNAF 1, the game actually adds some mechanics that aren't that bad. I have a personal vendetta against this sort of Rule 34 content, but I've got to be as honest as possible here. This game isn't terrible. It can be glitchy at times on top of some strange timing and difficulty choices, but the later nights add mechanics that would be enjoyable in a normal FNAF fan game. The new mechanics that differ from the main game are the addition of Springtrap and Golden Freddy, as well as Mangle. And to temper this, Freddy's only purpose is to be your punishment for running out of power. So, Bonnie and Chica have the same mechanics as they do in the original game, Bonnie peeking in your left door and Chica peeking on your right, respectively. Although, now they're not coded nearly as well, and pretty much just shoot straight from the show stage all the way to your doors at the start of the night each night, and stay there, even on night 1. As mentioned before, Freddy is just there as your punishment for losing power, and similarly to Bonnie and Chica, Foxy is also the same as FNAF 1, albeit a bit more consistently aggressive. You have to keep an eye on her in her camera, and if she is missing, that means she is on her way towards your office. Mangle acts the same, but she corresponds to your right door instead of your left, and she's significantly less aggressive than Foxy. Golden Freddy is now always visible on the camera, but her mechanic is the same as regular Golden Freddy, where bringing up your camera gets rid of them. And then finally, Springtrap. Springtrap, for one, is also visible on the camera, and when she appears in your vent camera, you can press the event button from your office. Now, I'm gonna be honest, while it is far from perfect, I actually think this gameplay isn't awful. There's significantly more incentive to keep an eye on the cameras, and there's very little breathing room, forcing you to always be active and paying attention to something else. Normally, I would applaud a fan game for this, but this just kinda makes me sad. There's a lot of potential here for a decent, non-pornographic FNAF fan game. Speaking of, the visuals. I am not an artist, but just from a layman's point of view, the quality of the art tends to vary. According to the Game Jolt description, as of November 4th, 2022, Marisu drew most of the assets, and he used bases for some of the poses and animations, which I guess would explain why some of the drawings seem higher quality than others. This leads me to the final aspect I want to speak on. The lore! What? Oh no! And I use the term lore lightly. Don't get me wrong, Five Nights at Freddy's 1 is not a story-based game, but it had great lore in relation to its visuals, giving us enough to raise questions, but just little to still remain a mystery. The lore in FNAF 1 is sexy anime robots. Now, I'm obviously biased. I'm willing to enjoy a good horror story about scary animal animatronics more than a bunch of sexualized animal animatronics. But seriously, some of this stuff is weird. Let me explain. The newspaper clipping at the beginning of the game establishes the setting, like regular FNAF. It's the night guard position from 12 to 6, but this time it takes place at an anime convention as opposed to a pizzeria. Through the phone calls, we learn the logic of the world. Marisu, as the phone guy, explains the quote, "Girls move around at night to stay limber."
The animatronics can get up to a bit of mischief at night, so be aware that the girls do tend to explore the place. They are put in some sort of night mode, so they are limbered up for the shows in the daytime. Something like that.
And if they get to you, they'll try to seduce you, I guess? But that's a bad thing, because if you try to engage with them, they will kill you by coitusing you to death. Because they have the appearance of bountiful anthropomorphized animals, but they're still robots, and they will play a bit rough.
The only real risk would be, if any, is the fact that the girls here, if they see you, will play a bit rough. Now that might sound good for some people, but with the heavy assets they have, you could imagine the discomfort and death.
I love the kind of woman that will actually just kill me.
Now, one thing that I noticed that made me laugh and then cry is Springtrap. Springtrap is a feminized version of a child killer. FNAF 3 came out on March 2nd, 2015, and FNAF came out April 15th, 2015. It took just over a month for Springtrap to go from this to this. This game lacks polish, both in gameplay and visuals, but for the time it came out, it's really not that bad of a game. The problem I have is the thinly veiled reason for its creation, which we'll talk more on later. For now, let's move on to Five Nights in Anime 2. Hey, if you enjoy my content and want to see it more often, I ask that you please consider becoming a channel member. And if not, don't. My content is free, so enjoy. And shout out to UnchangingJimmy and IntrepidandBold for becoming my channel members.
I order Mango to put her whole butt, and nothing but her butt on my face. Oh.
Five Nights in Anime 2 takes the worst qualities of the first game and multiplies them by 1,000,000. I wasn't even able to get past Night 3. There are just too many glitches that stack on top of each other that makes it significantly more difficult than it needs to be. For example, sometimes when Bonnie appears in the right vent, the light just stops working and Bonnie permanently stays in the right vent, meaning no matter what, if you take your panties off, we'll talk about that in a second, she will kill you. And this happens all the time and was a massive headache. For reference, I died more on Night 1 of FNAF 2 than I did on Night 5 of FNAF 1, all because of this glitch. Now, I'm not instantly going to blame the creator of this game because maybe it's somehow a byproduct of this being a re-upload of the original. But regardless, let's just get into the gameplay. Now, it's pretty obvious that this is a direct rip of Five Nights at Freddy's 2, but there are some gameplay changes made from the original, some more welcome than others. First off, Bonnie and Chica are pretty much the same, except they go exclusively for the left and right vents as opposed to the hallway in front of you. But again, coded extremely poorly, and with the vast majority of the times when they're responsible for killing you, it's because of a glitch. The Freddy animatronic is where we start to deviate from the original FNAF. She appears in the hallway like official FNAF, but in this case you use your flashlight to deter her. The same mechanic goes for Foxy in this game as well. Then we have the puppet. For some reason, she still has her own camera dedicated to her, like normal FNAF 2, but her mechanic is entirely different. Essentially, her camera doesn't matter, and all you have to look out for is if she appears in your office in front of you, you just have to lift up your camera for a moment and she will disappear. Next up is Balloon Babe, or BB. BB is mostly the same as original FNAF as well. You just have to put your mask on to keep her away. And if you fail to do so, she will steal your mask. And since I've said mask enough times, you probably are curious about what you're seeing here. And yes, the mask in this game is just panties. Just really solidifying in my mind what I am doing. Anyways, we have more animatronics to cover, but I want to specify, because I didn't finish the game, I didn't experience these mechanics personally, although thanks to the wiki, I am able to discuss their behaviors. So, we have Golden Freddy and Spring Bonnie, who have pretty much the same mechanics as each other to my knowledge. Basically, they both start in the closet and move closer to the left and right vents, and you need to lure them back to their closet with a sound lure of some kind. Then finally, we have Mangle, Marisu's self-acclaimed favorite of the bunch. I'm actually gonna read straight from the fan wiki here because it's something special. Quote, Mangle starts in her cove, off screen. She will then progress through multiple phases if not watched. If watched, she will regress phases. She may also go to Party Room 1 and Vent 1 if not watched enough. She will then appear in the vent's blind spot. If the player doesn't put on the panties, she will then f*** the player to death. I just find this entry to be kind of funny because it takes such a left turn at the end, even though it is technically accurate. Next, I want to cover the visuals and story, what little there is of both. First off, visually it's very similar to the first, although I feel there was a lot more effort put into both the individual drawings and animations. The problem I have to point out though is that the animation with all the effort behind it is this. Now, the story is very baseline, same as FNAF 1, but the first thing you may notice as you boot up good old Five Nights in Anime 2 and enter Night 1 is the phone guy is sounding strange.
Hello? Hello? Welcome to Freddy's Anime Convention. I hope you enjoy your stay here. With the way they move around, you wouldn't guess that they were animatronics at all. They're so sexy.
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell.
On top of how horny they sound, it seems our friend Marisu here is trying to sound feminine. I'm not sure why this is, and I'm not gonna speculate, but I found it strange enough to point out, since he used his normal voice for FNAF 1. This game didn't do much else worth pointing out, so let's move on to Five Nights in Anime Ultimate Location.
There's a big dick in my walls, hard on, through his pants I see his balls, hard on, keep my dick and balls inside.
I actually had no idea about this going in, but this game is just a demo, so I only had 2 nights to go off of. And right off the bat, I can say this game is significantly better than all of Marisu's previous work. Not only is the gameplay much more enjoyable and refined, but the visuals are greatly improved and even a little less risque. As you can probably see from the gameplay footage playing right now, this game is not based on any pre-existing Five Nights at Freddy's game, which is a welcome change in my opinion, although it was a risky one. This was the first and last entry in which all the mechanics had to come directly from the creator's head, and he didn't do a half-bad job. Let me explain. First off, Circus Baby is directly behind you. You literally have to watch her to keep her asleep, like some weirdo, and make sure she doesn't get too close. Then there's Bonnet. Bonnet can't actually kill you, but if she wakes up, she will take your flashlight, which is vital for one of the other animatronics. Helpy is in this game, and she will randomly appear in your office. I personally kept forgetting this was a mechanic, and it began to get a little frustrating, but I figured it out eventually. All you have to do is click on her and she'll disappear. similar to how normal Helpy works in Ultimate Custom Night. If you fail to do this, Helpy will take your body pillow, this game's equivalent to a mask. Next is Ballora, who is to your right. Essentially, she is kept at bay by her music, which you can reset using this button here at any time. The final three that you actually have to deal with within the demo are Funtime Chica, Rockstar Freddy, and El Chip. Funtime Chica will appear in the hall ahead of you, and this is where you need to use your flashlight. If you flash her enough, you can manipulate her into thinking she is having flash pictures of her taken, and she will be satisfied. Rockstar Freddy will appear at this right door, which if she does, you will just need to bring up your body pillow and she'll run away, seeing how gross, pimply, and disgusting you are with your body pillow. Although, if you fail to do this, she won't kill you, but she will rapidly deplete your power, which you think would be a death sentence, but this game introduced a mechanic in which you can recharge your power, which I actually enjoy. Of course, to make sure it's balanced, your power is significantly more strict until you recharge it. We also have El Chip in this game, but she only appears as an ad that covers your screen, and you have to press delete on your keyboard to close it, which is uncomfortable to press from where your hands normally rest while playing. Finally, there is one last character in this demo, Fredbear, but she only appears when you lose power to finish you off, and she doesn't appear otherwise in the night. I want to say, there are more characters in this game, which according to the wiki, includes Lefty, Spring Bonnie, Molten Freddy, Glitch Trap, and Shadow Bonnie. To be honest, it is kind of a shame that the one FNAF game that was the least of a drag to play was the one that got cancelled. But to be fair, I should consider myself blessed that I didn't have to look at any more risque animal robots. So, that's the gameplay, and I honestly thought it was pretty well balanced. Of course, the best thing this game did that the previous one did not was work properly.
What are you doing? What are you doing? No, what are you doing? What are you doing? Stop!
But in terms of how each mechanic works with each other, I found it to be clever. Since there are always so many things to manage, you could easily forget about the other mechanics. But since so many characters don't kill you, rather just make the game harder through limitations they add, there are a lot of potential moments in which you can more easily lose because of two mechanics working in tandem with each other. For example, if you fail to notice Lefty and she takes your body pillow, that'll mean the next time Funtime Freddy is at your door, she will drain your power until the end of the night, which means not only will your power drain faster, but it will also take longer to recharge, meaning that you will have significantly less time for characters like Bonnet, Ballora, and Baby. Again, if this game was non-pornographic, I might have actually enjoyed the game capture part of this video. So, the gameplay isn't all that bad, but what about the visuals? Well, I will say the quality of the drawings themselves is much better than the previous games. I actually think the quality of the animations is slightly worse though. Chances are this is because he traced actual video references for the first two games. I also want to point out, this game is the first one to really clothe the characters, and to make it so the jumpscare animations aren't alluding to essentially like the first two do. For example, Baby's jump scare is just a simple kiss, and Funtime's Chica jump scare is just a slap to the face. So, like I mentioned before, this game is not quite as risque as the previous two, don't get me wrong. It's still softcore porn, but I find it to be significantly less sexual and icky than the first two. The jump scares are more quirky and less fricking to death, so this game doesn't upset me nearly as much. Now finally, we can talk about the story. This game has the most story of the three, but not really by much, because again, this is only a demo. Interestingly, each night begins with a phone call that's different from most fan games.
I'm over here stroking my dick.
Instead of just being an audible tutorial at the beginning of each night, it actually precedes the night and is a dialogue box with Phone Girl, which allows you to select multiple different dialogue options. And while this is kinda cool, letting you learn about Phone Girl and that there was a, quote, incident at this establishment, due to the game not being complete, this is never elaborated on. But at least now we know that Phone Girl is of age! Okay, that was all that the Five Nights in Anime series had to offer. Truly an interesting series of games with decent potential wasted on the horny ideas of the dev and parts of the community. It honestly makes me a bit sad. Let's talk about that. So, when I was looking for these games to start working on this video, part of me wanted to not find them. As I mentioned while going through each of the entries in the series, it really depressed me seeing this potential being used on a series of games. And of course, on top of all that, I don't like of FNAF. Sue me. Regardless, I figured these games deserved a fair chance before I completely scrutinized them. I took a brief search on GameJolt and they weren't there. It took me around an hour to realize videos and talk of the games exist, but there is no mention of them going missing. Using the Wayback Machine, I discovered that the games seemed to go missing not too long ago, maybe a year or a few months back at least. The next place I looked was Reddit.
I've made a huge mistake.
Just want to say, do not look up Five Nights in Anime on Reddit.
Art, I don't want to alarm you, but...
It's seriously worse than I could have possibly imagined. The only post I found in relation to the games was a deleted Reddit post. But eventually, looking at that post with one more use of the Wayback Machine, the comments led me to an itch.io link with the collection of games in one file. At this point, I was tired. I had spent over an hour looking for something I was dreading. Luckily, the explanation for why the games had gone missing was in the comments. Apparently, GameJolt had cracked down on not safe for work content as of the start of 2022. This surprised me because as far as I could tell, Marisu never spoke on this on any of his social media.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
I've brought up Marisu a lot. I absolutely don't want to start drama or spread hate in any way, although I do need to dedicate a section to the creator that I continue to talk about, Marisu.
You can't help staring at Frisk's boobs. Ogre! Don't worry, guys, she's over 18, okay? This is an adult vision of the camera.
Marisu is more than just a game dev. In fact, it appears he spends most of his time on his YouTube channel. Now, I want to start with the positives. Right now, Marisu seems to be a harmless kids YouTuber.
Oh, is he like dozing off on the job? That's not a good idea! The animatronics! They get quirky at night!
He doesn't seem to swear from what I can tell, and he just talks about Friday Night Funkin'. Sure, it's a little cringe, but he's just on that grind. But if you go to view his videos by most popular, okay, this is where it gets a bit strange. These thumbnails are significantly more clickbaity. Now, you could argue that he just has transitioned from content for more of a mature audience to content that is more family friendly. But even looking by his oldest videos, we can see that he still avoided cursing. Now, this content was up to 7 years ago. If this content wasn't for kids, he wouldn't have to purposefully censor himself. You could defend him here and say he just personally doesn't want to swear, although I feel that is a stretch considering the kinds of games that he makes.
Ooh. Hi, honey. I didn't know you're such a big boy. Are you ready for your present? I thought you'd like a little treat.
Look, again, I don't want to start drama. I'm definitely not a big enough YouTuber to call out people, but I did a lot of research in preparation for this video, and I cannot get around the fact that this is weird. As I skimmed through his most popular videos, I noticed that a lot of them were released before and after the peak of Elsagate. You've probably heard of the Elsagate scandal before, but if you haven't, to sum it up, Elsagate was the rise of mature content in videos made for kids on YouTube. Elsagate was popularized as a term in summer of 2017, and the reason it's called that is because the most common type of video that contributed towards this issue was videos that used children's characters, like Elsa and Spider-Man. Now, I don't think Marisu's content is as bad as most Elsagate content. I mean, FNAF isn't technically a kid's game, regardless of its massive child fan base. But no matter what way I look at this, I do find it to be a bit problematic. To be fair to Marisu, he typically includes warnings in the games and videos that may be on the more mature end, although typically the warning is consistent of, this is a parody and not meant to be taken seriously, which I don't think was the concern, but it's something. And at some point, Fania's game description was updated with a FAQ section, including an explanation that the characters are not stuffed with corpses or possessed by kids like the official FNAF games. One last thing I noticed that is a plus is that this content seems to have been phased out to a certain degree on Marisu's channel. This could just be that he wanted to transition to content that was more popular nowadays, but I still figured this was worth pointing out. But overall, I find that this channel, that seems to have a very young subscriber base, is filled with a decent amount of softcore pornography, and that makes me pretty uncomfortable. Another thing that doesn't help his case is apparently he had started his YouTube career on a different channel, but he was banned. I can't really confirm this, but I found a comment mentioning this and he replied to it. Likely he was banned for some of the content in his videos. Exactly why I've had an incredibly sensitive trigger finger with the pixelation and blur in this video. I also want to clarify, I don't want any harassment to go Marisu's way, and I don't think his intentions were necessarily malicious, but I do find this combination of softcore pornographic content on a channel with a very young fan base to be a unhealthy combination, and I felt it should be addressed even if it's on my smaller channel. Look, I know this is a random thing to be including in the video, but I've already seen comments under his videos that, kind of seem to be from kids. I don't want to show any in case they want to remain private, but I feel this sort of content shouldn't be catered to younger audiences. Looking at this sort of thing can be extremely unhealthy for young developing brains, and even though I don't like that Marisu felt compelled to make these games in the first place, you could argue that the parents of the kids who come across these videos should be more careful what their offspring are looking at. This is fair to say in my opinion, but I have to stress this one last time, if thumbnails like this are getting shown to kids, that is not a good thing. Very few people know this, but I was exposed to these videos when I was younger, around 11 to 12 years old, and while I'm infinitely lucky that I stopped viewing it at some point and was not affected by this content as I matured, there are a lot of people that weren't this lucky. This is heartbreaking to me, especially as someone who grew up with and loves Five Nights at Freddy's and its kind and talented community. Marisu, if you're watching this video, which, let's be honest, is not likely, but on the off chance that you are, I would love to begin a dialogue with you, to have a conversation with you either in or out of a video, to get to know you better and to get a better perspective as to what's going on with you and your content.
Oh, she caught us cute, guys! Woo! It's getting hard here again!
Five Nights in Anime. The creator claims it was simply made as a joke, a parody of the original FNAF, and his intentions are not perverted. But I have to ask, what is the joke? What is the punchline here? I don't think Marisu is a pervert or something like that, but look at this, and this, and this, and all of this, and tell me this is a comedy of some kind. Look, if you're an adult, you can play these types of games. I don't really like it, but it's none of my personal business. Let's just agree that kids shouldn't be exposed to this stuff. It's really not cool. I know this video was dramatic and even possibly a bit of a bummer for a game that's not even technically around anymore, at least not in the same capacity, but I feel like it was a part of FNAF's history that we all knew about and didn't acknowledge. Who knows, maybe it's not that well known and I'm just crazy, but I wanted to take a second to point it out. Stuff like this makes up very little of the community. Sure, it may be the most bombastic, but this community is filled to the brim with creative, talented, and extremely polite individuals who make games and videos that bring the best out of the community. And also, I did trash Marisu in this video a bit, but seriously, I don't want to send any hate his way, so don't harass him or anything dumb like that. And definitely, don't leave this video thinking that the Five Nights at Freddy's community is depraved, or that that is the message I want to project at all. Sure, every community has its strange or even bad eggs, but I will always remember the Five Nights at Freddy's community as the one that makes great fan games, loves talking about robots, and doesn't let sexualized animal animatronics get them down. And thank you for watching. I've been recording for 51 minutes. Let's do it, yeah!